very good morning to all my dear students. Today we'll take the second session of auditory physiology and we would discuss about transduction of sound. So today's learning objectives are: what is the functional anatomy of inner ear? How the transmission of sound would occur in cochlea? How the hair cells would get excited based on the vibrations produced in the fluid located in the cochlea? And next, the auditory pathway. Last time we had seen that what is the function of ear. Along with balance, the job of ears is hearing. And these all structures play a very important role in conduction of sound via the auricle, via the external auditory meatus, which will hit the tympanic membrane. So this is how we had seen last time how the conduction of sound would occur via ossicles. So once the sound waves strike the tympanic membrane, the ossicles move in an orderly fashion to and the footplate of stapes would hit the oval window. What were the functions of middle ear? It was conduction of sound, impedance matching, and attenuation reflex. So this is what is middle ear. So middle ear is this, and this coiled structure which you see embedded within the bony labyrinth is inner ear. So if you look at this structure of inner ear, outside it is bony labyrinth, this structure. Within the bony labyrinth is enclosed membranous labyrinth, the purple structure. So we are concerned only with this structure, cochlea. Now once you divide the cochlea, here you see it is because of the presence of this middle structure, purple structure, it gets divided into 3 chambers. So this is what is cochlea. Let us see each in detail. So this cochlea is encased in temporal bone, which is one of the hardest bone in the body. This cochlea is spiral in shape and constitutes 2 3/4 turns around its axis. And this tube of the cochlea is divided into 3 chambers internally. First is scala vestibuli, second is scala media, which is also known as cochlear duct, the scala tympani. Scala in Latin means staircase. Now as you see, it is wound spirally, it resembles like a staircase. This green structure is scala vestibuli. So there is a Rissner's membrane which separates scala vestibuli from scala media. So here is a Rissner's membrane. Next structure is scala media. And the third structure, the third chamber, the green colored, is scala tympani. Now scala tympani is associated with round window. Now the basilar membrane separates scala tympani from scala media. Now both the scala tympani and scala vestibuli communicate with each other at one point that is known as helicotrema. So this is the junction where tympani and vestibuli communicate with each other. So if you see the cross section, here it is very evident how it is. So look at here. So this is scala vestibuli, the uppermost. Center is scala media. And this is scala tympani. Now this structure over here is basilar membrane. On the basilar membrane, you have organ of Corti. Now scala vestibuli and scala tympani contain perilymph, whereas scala media contains endolymph. Now this is the enlarged view of organ of Corti. So here you see there are so many cells which are arranged, organized properly. So these green structures are nothing but the hair cells, which are the most important transducers, means that will convert the mechanical energy into electrical energy. And here you see all these hair cells are having nerve supply. So let us see what happens when the oval window vibrates. So last time when we had seen that when the oval window is set into vibration, the sound will flow across the perilymph, and then at the helicotrema, it will reach via the scala tympani and hit near the round window. So round window does the job of absorbing that pressure. So whenever the oval window and is struck, the round window is in other phase. Means if this is in compression, this is in rarefaction. Both the windows are never in the same phase. So the movement of footplate or steppies would set a series of traveling waves in the perilymph. So the wave usually first moves up and then to the maximum height and then drops off rapidly. Now, as we know that the semicircular canals are in very close association with our cochlea. So usually the vibrations which are set in the perilymph do not affect the semicircular canal and the utricle unless the bony wall of the lateral canal is eroded. But if this erosion occurs, then of course these vibrations in the perilymph would also set vibrations in semicircular canals. So at that time, loud sound would be associated with transient vertigo. So this phenomena is known as Tullio's phenomena. Coming to basilar membrane, the most important structure. Now, this is the basilar membrane in the spiral fashion, which is unrolled. So this is unrolled cochlea. So this basilar membrane is elastic band which is spiraled along the cochlea. This basilar membrane does the job of responding to pressure changes created by the oscillations of the perilymph. George von Bessky had won Nobel Prize for determining the structure and the mechanical properties of the basilar membrane. He had said that the mechanical properties vary continuously along its length. Basilar membrane is not uniform. Now let us see why this is important. Now, we can understand it with the comparison of xylophone. Now in the xylophone here you see there are different bands, so which vary in different size and height. Now basilar membrane can be compared to this. Now this small band over here, and this is the longer band. So the large bar will create a long wavelength. So whenever the wavelength is more, the frequency is less. So this is very evident over here. Long wavelength means low frequency. And when we come to the short bar will create short wavelength. And whenever the wavelength is short, that will create high frequency. So similarly, we can compare it with the basilar membrane. As we know that we just have one basilar membrane and it has to respond to a different varieties of frequencies. So each section of basilar membrane will respond to different frequency. Now let us see how this is possible. Now in the basilar membrane, as we had seen that the mechanical property keeps on changing across its entire length. This basilar membrane is graded in mass and stiffness along its entire length. So how is it different? Now in the diagram, if you see, the base is thick. This is the base and this is the apex. So base is thick, apex is thin. Base, if you see, it is narrow. If you see apex, it is broader than that of base. So we can say at the base, that is near the oval and the round window, the basilar membrane is thicker. It is almost stiffer 100 times than that of the apex, and it is narrow. And when we go to the apex near the helicotrema, it is thinner as compared to the base. It is more compliant and wider by 5 times. Means it is wider by 5 times as compared to that of base. So this is how the mechanical property change across the whole length. Now, the basilar membrane has got highest coefficient of elasticity near oval window. Now, as you know, the elastic coefficient means it determines the degree to which you resist change to the stress or pressure. So the basilar membrane at base is more tougher and less compliant as that compared to apex. Means it will take more energy or more frequencies to move this section as compared to that of apex. Now let us see how the amplitude pattern of the basilar membrane is present. Now as compared to xylophone, so the short bar means towards the apex you will have lower frequency. The long bar means long wavelength, low frequency. So similarly will be seen at apex. So at apex you will have low frequencies to which the basilar membrane will respond. And near the short bar you have high frequencies. So short bar generates high frequencies, means the basilar membrane will respond to higher frequencies near the base. So we can say the lower frequencies will propagate across the basilar membrane to reach the cochlear apex, whereas the high frequencies will culminate at the base. So again in the same diagram you see, this is a traveling wave which will start from the base and will try to reach the cochlear apex. Now whenever the oscillation is produced, the onset of each wave is, each wave at the onset is weak. But as it travels along the basilar membrane, it will become strong till it reaches a specific portion of the basilar membrane which matches the frequency of the sound wave. So the basilar membrane at that point will vibrate with ease and the energy is released, and this is how the wave dies off. So at the starting point it will be weak, and then it will come to a point where the natural resonance of the basilar membrane will be equal to that of the sound wave which has been reached the oval window, and then it will vibrate with easily over here, the energy would be released and then the wave dies off. So at any point of time, some part will move up, some part will move down. So this corresponds to the traveling wave propagation. So in this diagram, if you see at the base, we have frequencies of higher version to which the basilar membrane will respond. Middle will respond to the medium frequency, and the apex would respond to low frequency. This can be similarly compared to that of the sitar or veena, which is usually played. So if you want to play high frequency, we usually block the string at the lower side so that the high frequency is produced, and if you want to create sound of lower frequencies, we usually block the string at the higher end. So this pattern of differentiation allows the cochlea to discriminate different frequencies. So this ability is known as cochlear tonotropy, means each section of the basilar membrane will respond to specific frequency. Thus, the cochlea becomes a highly sensitive multi-channel frequency filter. Now let us see the frequency decomposition, means how the basilar membrane again responds. So if you see here, 1 means, this is just a representation. 1 means 1600 hertz. If you see 2, it means 800, 3 is 400, 4 is 200, 5 means 100 hertz, 6 is 50 hertz, and 7 is 25 hertz. So if you compare with the distance from the stapes, as the distance is increasing, the portion of basilar membrane responds to a lower frequency of sound. So we can say that the distance from the apex of cochlea and the frequency of sound follows logarithmic relationship. It is not a linear relationship. So at the base is higher frequency and at the apex is lower frequencies. Similarly, we can discuss about the stimulation of hair cells depending on the frequency. Now, in this diagram, a 4 kilohertz sound wave has reached the footplate of stapes. So that will cause this section of basilar membrane into vibration, because of which these hair cells will get stimulated, and then the efferent fibers will carry the electrical signal. So I can say the auditory nerve fibers are activated most easily at the natural resonant best frequencies. So this 4 kilohertz will cause this section of basilar membrane to oscillate, not the the areas which are present nearby it. So, as according to Helmholtz resonance theory, the characteristics frequency of an auditory nerve fiber reflects the resonant frequency of the basilar membrane segment from which it originates. Means the 4 kilohertz sound will cause vibration at this segment, which will cause stimulation of this hair cell, and only this nerve fiber would carry the signals. Now coming to cochlea and the organ of Corti. As we had seen before, this is scala vestibuli, scala media, and scala tympani. Oh, in the scala media lies the organ of Corti. Now let us see this in detail. Now this is a representative diagram. If you see here, the Italian anatomist Alfonso Corti had described this organ of Corti, and hence this structure is named after him. So it consists of hair cells. These are inner hair cells and these are outer hair cells. So it has got supporting cells nearby. These are the pillars or rods of Corti. Okay, they form the most important anchorage system. This gelatinous acellular structure is known as tectoral membrane. You see this blue structure? This is known as reticular lamina. And this one, on which the hair cells and the other supporting cells lie, is known as basilar membrane. So this basilar membrane separates scala media from scala tympani. So in scala media you have endolymph, and in scala tympani you have perilymph. These are the auditory nerve fibers with synapse at spiral ganglia. Now coming to hair cells. Now if you see this hair cell, it is a polarized mechanosensitive receptor, means it will respond to mechanical stimulus, that is some force or displacement. Now on the apical section, this is the apical section and this is the base. At the apical section you have rows of stereocilia. Okay, so these are also known as hair bundles. So they are arranged in ranks of increasing heights, means this is the largest one or the tallest one, which is known as kinocilium. And if you see here, these are all in the lesser height. On the basal side, you have one or more efferent neurons. At the base, you have synaptic vesicles which contains neurotransmitters. Usually glutamate is a neurotransmitter which is contained within these vesicles, and it is excitatory in nature. Coming to next, the hair cells. Now hair cells, as I have told you, they are of two types. Inner hair cells, which act as actual sensory hair cells, and next we have the outer hair cells. The outer hair cells usually get input from the brain, and they are involved in active mechanism of frequency tuning. While comparing the inner and the outer hair cells, the number is of the outer hair cells is almost 12,000. Coming to the inner hair cells, they are quite less as compared to that of the outer hair cells. It is 3,500. The outer hair cells are located far away from the modulus, whereas the inner hair cells are located near. Outer hair cells are usually 3 in numbers, sometimes they may be 4, and inner hair cells are always represented in one row. The shape of the outer hair cell is cylindrical. It is almost 8 micron in diameter, whereas the inner hair cell is flask shaped, almost 12 micron in diameter. Coming to the supporting cells. The supporting cells are also known as phalangeal cells of Dieter's. Now they hold these hair cells in a cup-shaped depression, and they extend upwards into the reticular lamina. You see this blue structure? That is what is reticular lamina. The job of the supporting cells is mechanical anchorage to these hair cells, and also they are involved in metabolic tasks, for example, uptake of excess of potassium. Coming to the rods of corti. Rods of corti form the tunnel of corti and furnish as a major support to this whole system. They separate this inner hair cells in single row and the 3 rows of outer hair cells. Coming to reticular lamina. They form the tight junction which separates endolymph and the perilymph. They also give support to the hair cells. Because of this separation, the processes of the endolymph are dipped in endolymph. The process of the hair cells are dipped in endolymph, whereas the tunnel of organ of corti and the bases of the hair cells are dipped in perilymph. Tectoral membrane. Coming to the tectoral membrane, as I have told you, it is a gelatinous acellular structure. It overlies over the hair cells like a blanket in which the stereocilia are embedded, means they are within this lower side of the tectoral membrane. Whenever the movement of the basilar membrane occurs, the hair cells are dragged back and forth, which causes bending of this stereocilia. Now, this is another 3-dimensional image of the organ of corti. If you see here, this is the inner hair cell. These are the pillar cells which form the tunnel of corti. This is the basilar membrane. You see here the outer hair cells. Here they are arranged in 4 rows. So these are the diater cell, or the green one, the supporting cells. Okay. Coming to endocochlear potential, it is very, very important, and it is quite different from that of the resting membrane potential occurring in the other excitable tissues. Now, let us see the characteristics of endolymph. Now, in the endolymph, we have the concentration of potassium almost to 150 milliequivalent, which contributes to the potential of plus 80 millivolts. This plus 80 millivolts represents endocochlear potential. Now, this high potential difference creates a strong electrochemical gradient, which causes the driving force for potassium influx across the stereocilia. Coming to perilymph, perilymph almost has only very little potassium as compared to that of endolymph, only 5 milliequivalent. So the potential over here is almost 0 milliequivalent. This high electrical potential, it sensitizes the cell to respond to even slightest sound, means even the lowest frequency can cause electrical potential generation in this hair cells. So to summarize the differences between endolymph and perilymph. So here you see this is scala vestibuli and scala tympani, which contains perilymph, and the center one is scala media, which contains endolymph. So the green one is perilymph, the blue is endolymph. Now, if you see the location of endolymph is scala media, location of perilymph is scala tympani and scala vestibuli. The ionic concentration in endolymph, we have high levels of potassium and very low sodium. Coming to perilymph, it is almost equivalent to ECF, very high sodium and very low potassium. The endocochlear potential of plus 80 millivolts is present in the endolymph, attributed to high potassium levels, whereas in the perilymph, it is very weakly positive, it is almost 0 millivolts. So this is a 3-dimensional image of hair cells. Here you see it is a bundle of hair, stereocilia, which are kept together. If you see the arrangement, they are arranged in increasing height. Okay, so there is only one hair cell, the tallest one, which is known as kinocilium here. And if you look at this image, Yes, if you see, all the tips are linked to each other. So stereocilia means stiff hair. They act as mechanoreceptive organelle, and these stereocilia consist of actin filaments, whereas a kinocilium has got myosin in it. So again, a simplified version of the arrangement of stereocilia. Now, there are all approximately 100 stereocilia with one kinocilium. So this typical arrangement gives an axis of mirror symmetry, means the number of stereocilia on this side is equal to the number of stereocilia on the other side. Because of this symmetrical arrangement, we get the axis of maximal mechanical sensitivity. Now look at this. So whenever the sound stimulus comes, what is going to happen? This will cause bending of the stereocilia. Now, these stereocilia are linked to each other with various linkages. It is present either at the tip or lateral or at the ankle. So, these stereocilia are mechanically stiff throughout, but they are flexible at their insertion point or the pivot point. This is the area where it tapers as compared to that of the apex. So, because of the linkages which are present at the tip, at the lateral side or at the ankle, the whole bundle of stereocilia moves as a whole. Means if this one moves, it will cause movement of the rest of the others. So let us see the hair cell in resting state. So this is what I have got, a magnified view of the arrangement of stereocilium. So this section is known as tip linkage, means it will link to the adjacent higher one. If you magnify this, this tip link is connected to mechanically gated channels. Okay, so movement of this stereocilia will cause movement of ions across these channels. The mechanically gated channels means it will respond to stretch. Now, as we know, endolymph, and this is what is perilymph. So whenever the sound comes, the basilar membrane is set into vibration. So whenever the basilar membrane is set into vibration, the stereocilia are also forced to move. So here you see this oscillatory movement in the perilymph is responsible for the shear forces between tectoral membrane and the basilar membrane. So in the resting position, the pivot points, these are the pivot points. So whenever the movement occurs, there is shifting of these pivot points. So the deformation of the cochlear duct will cause differential movement of this basilar and the tectoral membrane. So if there is movement up, what is going to happen? The basilar membrane moves up, because of which the hair cells move in this direction, means towards the taller one. If the basilar membrane moves down, the movement is in opposite direction. So this shear forces causes displacement of the stereocilia. So any vibration in the perilymph will cause shear force between the basilar membrane and the tectoral membrane, which will cause bending of the stereocilia. So the forces and displacement are getting converted into electrical responses within these hair cells. So it is said that a bundle, hair bundle movement as little as 0.3 nanometers can get converted into electrical signals in almost 10 microseconds. So these fast is the response of the hair cells to the shear forces. Now coming to the movement of the tip links. Now here again you see in resting position, these gated channels are linked with the tip links. So if the movement is towards this side, what is going to happen? The channels would open, means towards the taller one. And if the movement is away from the taller one, the channels are closed. So let us see how the movement towards the kinocilium causes excitation of the hair cells. When the shorter one is pushed towards the taller one, that will cause opening of this mechanical gated potassium channels. So when these potassium channels open up, this will cause influx of potassium inside the hair cells, means the resting membrane potential will start moving towards the positivity. That is known as depolarization. So once the depolarization occurs, the voltage gated calcium channels will open up, causing influx of calcium within the hair cells. Now, in response to the influx of calcium, the vesicles starts moving towards the base and causes release of neurotransmitters via exocytosis. Now, these neurotransmitters are usually glutamate, which are excitatory in nature. So, release of this glutamate will cause end plate potentials, leading to action potentials, and these will be carried by efferent nerves towards the brain. Now, when the movement occurs away from the gynoecilia, what is going to happen? The potassium channels gets closed, so there occurs hyperpolarization. So in view of hyperpolarization, the calcium channels close. As there is closure of these calcium channels, there is no release of neurotransmitters, which reduces the firing from this hair cells. So this is how the action potential generation occurs in the hair cell. So this is what I wanted to say. The movement of the tiplings. So whenever the movement is towards a taller one, it is depolarization. Whenever it is away from the taller one, it is hyperpolarization. So the changes in the membrane potential is in close association with the direction as well as the distance the hair moves. If more the distance and it is towards the taller one, it is depolarization. If it is away from the taller one, it is hyperpolarization. So this is how it happens. The movement towards the taller one, opening of these channels because of which the potassium will enter inside, and depolarization occurs. So at resting state, the cells are partially depolarized, means some potassium entries usually occur. If there is depolarization, more potassium enters inside, so the firing will increase. With the movement away from the gynoecilium, the firing reduces. So this is hyperpolarization. Let us see how the potassium gets recycled. This is also known as cochlear potassium circulation. Now, as you know, from the endolymph, the potassium is going to enter into the hair cells in response to the shear forces which is created. That is, the bending of the stereocilia will cause entry of potassium into the hair cells. Now, once they enter into the hair cells, they pass in from the hair cells, they will go across the supporting cells, that is the Dieter cells. Now, these Dieter cells, they form a tight epithelial gap junction network. Now, if you see these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 till 5, they are nothing but the type of fibrocytes which are part of the organ of Corti. So from here, the potassium from the hair cells will go via these phalangeal cells or the supporting cells into the outer sulcus cell, and it is secreted back into the scala media via stria vascularis. So this is how the potassium recycling occurs. It is very, very important to maintain the potassium at the level of 150 because that is responsible for the endocochlear potential. Now let us see how the auditory efferents work. Now as you see, the inner hair cells are single row and the outer hair cells are in 3 rows. But if you look at the efferents, inner hair cells give more efferents as compared to the outer hair cells. So these efferent fibers, they form the cochlear division of the 8th nerve. Now these cell bodies are located in the spiral ganglion. So the inner hair cells are constituting 90 to 95% of the auditory efferents, whereas the outer hair cells contribute only 5 to 10% of auditory efferents. Now, let us see the efferents. It is not just that these hair cells only give the information, they also receive information from the higher centers. So, if you look here, the green one. So, the green is a lateral superior olivary complex, and the red one is medial superior olivary complex. So, this is a very important nucleus which is closely associated with the auditory pathway. So, here you see there is crossing over occurring to reach the outer hair cells as well as the inner hair cells. So, they constitutes ipsilateral and contralateral olivocochlear bundle. So this efferents majority goes to the outer hair cells as you see here, and minor is received by the inner hair cells. The inner hair cells receives efferents from lateral superior olivary complex, and the outer hair cells receives its efferents from the medial superior olivary complex. Now, why this is important? Because there is release of acetylcholine at the base of the hair cells, which is inhibitory in nature, which is responsible for modulation of functioning of the inner hair cells. Again, you see here, this is the same thing which has been explained. The 3 rows of the hair cells and the single row. So we can say these nerve fibers, just look at this inner hair cells. It sends efferent to the cochlear nucleus, which will go to the brainstem. It receives efferent from this one, the lateral superior olivary nucleus. Now coming to the outer hair cells, it gives efferents again to the cochlear nucleus, but it receives efferents from medial superior olivary nucleus. So here you see the efferents give acetylcholine. Now, so the function of inner hair cells is they are the primary sensory receptors. So these is the place where the energy transduction occurs, means mechanical energy gets converted into electrical energy, and this occurs because of the stimulation of the fluid movements, which causes generation of action potential in these auditory nerves. Coming to the outer hair cells, they also respond to the sound like inner hair cells, but there is a slight difference of the outer hair cells from the inner hair cells. They are conferred with a property of somatic motility. Now, there is another motor protein known as prestine, which is present in millions of numbers in the outer hair cell membrane. Now, these prestine confers somatic motility to the outer hair cells. So what exactly is prestine? Prestine is the piezoelectric transducer, means the size of this protein would change depending on the potential changes. Whenever depolarization occurs, the prestine will undergo configurational changes and will shorten up. Whereas whenever hyperpolarization occurs, it causes lengthening. So for depolarization, the outer hair cells will shorten. For hyperpolarization, the outer hair cells will lengthen. So, depending on the changes in the membrane potential, the outer hair cells actively and rapidly change their length. So, this property of electromotility causes either amplification or attenuation of the movement of the basilar membrane. Attenuation means reduction. So, this helps, that is the increase or decrease in the length of the outer hair cells helps in improving and tuning the stimulation of the inner hair cells. So this is how the outer hair cells increase the amplitude as well as the clarity of the sounds which enter the inner hair. And the tuning is also supported with the olivocochlear bundle, which usually ends around the bases of the outer hair cells, where the acetylcholine is released and it modulates the sensitivity of the hair cells. So why this is important? Because this may play a role to block the background noises while allowing other sounds to hear. I think we usually come across the situations like, in a telephone booth, for example, if there is sound from outside, still you are able to listen to the speaker. So maybe this is a place where the outer hair cells come into picture. So to summarize the distinguishing features between the outer and the inner hair cells, first, the number. Outer hair cells are much more as compared to that of inner hair. Almost 12,000 as compared to 3,500 of inner hair cells. Location. It is farther from the modulus, whereas the inner hair cells are nearer. Come to the number of rows, 3 or sometimes 4, whereas inner hair cells are arranged only in a single row. Coming to shape, outer hair cells are cylindrical in shape, whereas inner hair cells are flask shaped. Development. They are, inner hair cells are earlier to develop as compared to that of outer hair cell. Nerve supply. The primary nerve supply is efferent, means it constitutes more the efferent component, whereas the inner hair cells constitute more of efferent component. Almost 90 to 95% of efferents arise from inner hair cells, and only 1 to 5% arises from the outer hair cells. The main function of inner hair cell is to transmit auditory stimulus to the brain, and the outer hair cell plays an important role in modulation of the function of the inner hair cells. Whereas coming to vulnerability, outer hair cells can get easily damaged, whereas inner hair cells are more resistant to damage. Come to the relay stations of the auditory pathway. That means once the action potentials are generated within the cochlea, how do they reach the brain? So to reach the brain, they have these relay stations. First is the spiral ganglion. Second is the superior olivary nucleus, the trapezoid nucleus, and the nucleus of lateral lemniscus, this portion. Next relay station is inferior colliculus. The fourth one is medial geniculate body, and the fifth one is auditory cortex. Now the auditory pathway is different from rest of the sensory pathway because as it has got more number of relay stations, so of course it has more number of order of neurons. Means in the spinothalamic we have 3 orders of neuron, whereas in auditory pathway we have 5 orders of neuron. So coming to the first order neuron. So the first order neuron, it arises from the inner and the outer hair cells. Okay, so these are the nerve fibers from the spiral ganglion of cortex, and they end in this portion, that is the dorsal and the ventral cochlear nucleus, which are located in the upper medulla. So first order neuron is from the spiral ganglion till the dorsal and the ventral cochlear nucleus. From here arises the second order neuron. Now, as you see here, in the second order neuron, most of the fibers cross to the opposite side and few remain uncrossed. The crossing of the fibers constitutes trapezoid body over here. Okay. So after crossing, either both the uncrossed as well as the crossed fibers, they reach superior olivary complex, which is this green structure. Now next is, from here arises the third order neuron. That is, fibers from the superior olivary complex plus the trapezoid body, they will enter the lateral lemniscus, and from here they will reach the inferior colliculus. So superior olivary complex plus trapezoid body, they both form the lateral lemniscus, and from here they end at inferior colliculus, which is located in the midbrain. Fourth order neuron. From the inferior colliculus, it will go to the medial geniculate body over here. And the fifth order neuron would be from the medial geniculate body, the acoustic radiations arise, which goes to the auditory cortex. So to summarize, we would say the first order neuron is the nerve fibers from the spiral ganglion till the cochlea, till the cochlear nucleus, that is the dorsal and the ventral cochlear nucleus. From here, few fibers remain uncrossed and maximum cross. So the crossed one form the trapezoid body. So both the crossed as well as the uncrossed will terminate in the superior olivary complex. So this is the second order neuron. From the superior olivary complex, trapezoid body and the lateral lemniscus, they all terminate in the inferior colliculus. That is the third order neuron. The fourth order neuron arises from the inferior colliculus and ends in the medial geniculate body. And the fifth order neuron is from the medial geniculate body, the auditory radiations to the auditory cortex. So to conclude, I can say cochlea is an adaptive real-time acoustic analyzer. Means it will analyze the different frequencies of the sound wave. The basilar membrane is graded in mass and stiffness. That is, the base is more tough, more stiff and narrow. Whereas as you go towards the apex portion is thin, more compliant and broader as compared to the base. So as it is graded in mass and stiffness, each section can respond to the oscillatory pressure changes at specific frequency dependent position. The oscillation of the basilar membrane causes shear forces which deflect the stereocilia of the hair cells. The hair cells have got mechanosensitive ion channels which are linked to to the adjacent stereocilia with the help of tip links. So whenever the stretching of these ion channels occur, the entry of potassium occurs, which causes depolarization and release of neurotransmitters, consequently resulting in generation of action potential. In this context, the inner hair cells, they are the primary sensory transducers, whereas the outer hair cells are conferred with somatic motility attributed to the motor protein pristine. Now, because of which the outer hair cells offer mechanical feedback for cochlear amplification. And all the electrical potentials which are generated in the hair cells, they propagate along the efferent axons into the brain via the auditory pathway. The month of May is called as a better hearing and speech month. So let us all hear better and speak better and help people to communicate more and spread positivity around us. Thank you very much for your patient listening.